again. My name's Robert McMillan, and we're back here, how to raise teens for fun and profit. And if you've got teenagers, you probably think that's a sick joke. Let's look today at the physical and social changes of adolescence. And really, if it weren't for puberty, the physical changes that turn a child into an adult, well, adolescence would be a piece of cake. But we cannot blame everything on raging hormones. Our children are more than a collection of often competing chemicals surging through their bodies. One of the great spiritual battles with Satan takes place during adolescence that joins the physical, social, psychological, and spiritual components of a child's makeup. And the thing is, it does it in a big, complicated soup that the kid just struggles to figure out, and we parents struggle to keep on top of it. At this point in their adolescence, Satan can stop a young man or a young woman from becoming a great man or a great woman of God. Look at Romans chapter 7, verses 23 to 25. And Paul, the apostle, writing about a time in his life when he was an adult, not when he was an adolescent, but it applies to the adolescent as well. But I see a law in my members warring against the law of my mind, and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. In other words, he's seeing the struggle that he's having that's caused by himself. And our teenagers see that, but they can't figure out, this is just a natural part of me growing up. O wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? I thank God. There's a solution. I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So then, with the mind, I myself serve the law of God, but with the flesh, the law of sin. He knows he's at war. Our teenagers don't know that yet. We've got to help them. But they're being told a pack of lies by the culture. Now, God calls it the law of sin. The psychologists will often call it raging hormones. Now, who's going to be right? I'll go with God on this. Once you've fallen for the idea that physical forces outside of his or her or your control drive your child, you and your child are absolved of any responsibility. It's raging hormones. It's a period of life. And so the logical advice given to parents nowadays is get them through it any way you can. Certainly their bodies are going through considerable changes, but Satan will take any breakdown in equilibrium at any point in a person's life to destabilize your teen and bring her to a fall. We cannot use the argument of raging hormones as an excuse for rebellion. Sin causes rebellion. And our children are sinners by nature and practice, just like we are. Let's look now at 3 phases of maturation that our children go through from the beginning when they're in diapers till the time they're walking out the door with their suitcase. The first phase is imprinting. It occurs in the first 7 years of life. The child learns the characteristics of his gender in relationship to others. And I've got more to speak on this a little later on when we're dealing with guiding your teenager to sexual clarity, which is being stripped away from our teenagers right now as I speak. Fathers roughhouse with their sons, but rarely with their daughters. And mothers deal with their daughters differently than they deal with their sons. It's just the way it is. That first imprinting where the child learns from the parents, this is what a man is, this is what a woman is. And if the little boy looks at his father and his mother, he says, I'm like that. I'm like my dad. And the daughter looks and says, I'm like my mother. The second phase is modeling. And that's from the age of about 7 to 14. And these are rough numbers. 7 to 14, it could be 6 to 15 or 6 to 13 or whatever. And this is where they practice what they have been picking up, what has been imprinted. This is the point, by the way, at which some of the godly men in the Bible failed miserably as parents. King David, for instance. In 1 Kings 1, 5 through 6, it says, Then Adonijah, the son of Haggith, exalted himself. Now, Adonijah was one of David's sons. and he was the son of Haggith, who was one of his concubines. Adonijah says, I will be king, and he prepared him for himself chariots and horsemen and 50 men to run before him. Now here's the key. Here's the key. And his father had not rebuked him at any time by saying, why have you done so? King David was willing to raise free-range children. He just produced them and let them go their merry way. And he paid a terrible price for that. And then look at Eli's sons. They failed morally. Eli was a godly man, and yet as a judge of Israel, he raised foolish sons. In 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 12 through 17, it says this about Eli and his sons. Now the sons of Eli were corrupt. Literally in the Hebrew it says they were sons of Belial. That means they were worthless and wicked and corrupt, and about 100 other words that are synonymous with those words. They did not know the Lord, and that was the basis of their problem. And the priest's custom with the people was that when any man offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come with a 3-pronged flesh hook in his hand while the meat was boiling. Then he would thrust it into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot, and the priest would take for himself all that the flesh hook brought up. So they did in Shiloh to all the Israelites who came there. Also, before they burned the fat, the priest's servant would come and say to the man who sacrificed, give meat for roasting to the priest, for he will not take boiled meat from you, but raw. Now, in terms of culinary delights, boiled meat isn't up there with the top one. When you go to a barbecue, you want to have a nice marbled steak, don't you? And you want that fat to be dripping off of it. And you want to, well, I don't want to get started because I'm getting hungry. But you understand what I'm saying? These guys wanted it so it tastes good, and they wanted it the way they wanted it, not boiled. I mean, boiled food. I mean, the only country that does that is Scotland. I don't want to get into that. Verse 16, and if the man said to him, they should really burn the fat first, then you may take as much as your heart desires. He would then answer him, no, but you must give it now, and if not, I will take it by force. Therefore the sin of the young men was very great before the Lord. The men abhorred the offering of the Lord. So in the time of modeling, these guys hadn't implemented what they had seen imprinted by the lifestyle of their father. And it's the father's fault. He didn't do his job to make sure that he was watching them as they modeled the lifestyle of the man of God. The third phase is socialization, and that's from the ages of 15 to 19, roughly. At this point, the child is acting out what he or she has learned and taken to be as truth. If you raised free-range children, that's what you're going to be seeing as your children are socializing with their peers, as they're distancing themselves from you. This is a time when your child begins to separate from you and connect to his peers, and that's normal, it's natural, it's good, it's right. But if you haven't imprinted, if you haven't been a good example to them, if they haven't been modeling alongside of you, if they haven't been socialized properly by you, no telling what the outcome would be. So there's imprinting, there's modeling, there's socialization. Next week we're going to look at the parental response to adolescence. How do we respond? And most of the time we're tempted to respond incorrectly. So I want you to come next time and check me out. And for right now, please like this video, and if you would, subscribe to this channel so you can keep up to date with it. And I'm preparing a document, it's about a 60-page document that I'll provide for you at the end of all this to help you to review the notes, to consider how you're doing with your teenagers. So until then, goodbye, God bless you, pray for your kids, love your kids, and I'll see you next time.